Tom Trento, Director of the United West, here with some critically important information regarding the Mike Lindell Cyber Symposium that was held a couple of weeks ago. If you remember, just before the symposium, the United West team put a flag in the ground. We put our flag down to sort of predict what was going to happen. If you don't remember that, just take a look at this. But we do not believe that the material, the so-called evidence, the data that Lindell, HOWSE, and Fanning are peddling proves that China hacked the 2020 election. In fact, the proof put forth by Lindell is forged and fake and ought not be believed. We want to stop any non-fact, off-the-rails chaos from undermining the important forensic work now in process. And we want to make sure the 80 million Trump voters are not demoralized when the house that Mike Lindell built on sand comes crashing down. Were we geniuses? Were we prophetic? No, absolutely not. We simply analyzed the data. And independently from us, our very good friends did the same exact thing, and they're with us today. Jeff Nyquist, how are you today? Jeff, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Tom. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to just read a little bit of your bio because you've got all kinds of stuff going on. Jeff has written for Newsmax, for WorldNet Daily, Sierra Times, Financial Sense, Epoch Times, and you've written a book, Origins of the Fourth World War, The New Tactics of Global War, and The Fool and His Enemy. But he wrote recently on this Lindell Symposium an article entitled Absolute Sabotage, the Rise and Fall of a False Narrative. Jeff, why did you pick that title? And man, you put a lot of work into that article.
Yeah, it was one of the most worked articles because I spent months actually working with other people, Mike Zullo especially, who gave me an education in the background of Dennis Montgomery, who is the man who is supplying Mike Lindell with his data. That Mike Lindell claims that he has these packet captures that tell the story of China hacking the election. And the reason that I call it absolute sabotage is that we want the truth about the election, which requires that we have audits. But this is sabotaging the real investigation because it's a wild goose chase. You know, it's a false narrative. And that's why I call it the rise and fall of a false narrative, because they're not going to ever find any proof going this route.
And if everyone remembers the symposium and the Absolute Proof series, 4 extensive videos produced by Mike Lindell, obviously, Brandon HOWSE, Mary Fanning, and the proposition that Mike Lindell led with was simply that he had data that China hacked the election, and it was conclusive, dispositive. He was going to present it. The Supreme Court would be overwhelmed, and President Trump would be reinstated as president August, September.
Well, everyone, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. What you're going to see now is 100% proof that we had upon our country the biggest cyber attack in history. And I'm going to bring on Mary Fanning to explain how it all happened and show you the 100% proof. Mary, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Mike. What we're seeing here is, if you look at this chart, is that there were cybersecurity experts who began collecting information before, during, and after the election. This was collected in 2,995 counties in the United States. This was collected in real time. All right, so if you go to the chart, what you will see is a documentation of foreign interference in the election. The first column, if you look at the chart, that shows that on 11/5/2020 at 7:43 and 38 seconds, we had a foreign intrusion, and it shows the IP address, the Internet Protocol address. That is the number of that protocol address of the hacker that entered into our election. This is proof positive. This is documentation of a cyber attack, but it also is documentation of the footprints of those who entered our election.
Right. When I said, and I actually told the president when I met with him, I said, you know, you actually won this election by almost 80 million votes for you, for Donald Trump, to about 68 million for Biden. I mean, this is incredible, everybody. This is historical proof, too. We not only have, this is what we've all been waiting for. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Lindell, and as you all know, on January 9th, I received evidence of a cyber attack orchestrated by China on our 2020 election. And with us right now is one of my cybersecurity experts. These guys are the best. And this guy has over 20 years of experience working in both the private sector and with government law enforcement and intelligence agencies. He has many information and cybersecurity certifications that specialize in advanced adversary detection, mitigation, and elimination. And here he is now. Hello.
Hello, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for all the work you've done for our country, and thanks for all the work you've done for myself. And I know I put yourself and many others through a couple months worth of work now, and they have all this information, millions of lines of data. Why don't we show that right now? Can you go ahead and say what we're watching here?
Yeah, that's essentially the raw encrypted data. And I mean, that would run for the next couple of days. You know, that's the amount of data that we're dealing with here.
So what this contains here is what? What are these? Is this cyber forensics? What are we looking at? What are these called? I know you had told me before they're called like PCAPs or something.
Yeah, so PCAP is just an acronym for packet capture. So it's essentially a moment in time that is captured, and that the transmission of those packets, any information that travels between point A and point B, is essentially a packet. And so that's where we're very blessed and fortunate to have, you know, some of these guys that actually recorded the information as it happened.
Did you heard it here, people? You heard it here, everyone. We have, what a blessing it is that we have the evidence. This is what I've been telling everybody for months now, since January 9th. These are the actual evidence that was collected the night of the election and a couple days following. And right now, you have a job to do, everyone. Spread the word, show this evidence everywhere. And why are we doing that? Because when this gets to the Supreme Court, the big win is they have to accept it to look at it, everybody. They have to accept it to look at it. Because once they look at it, it will be absolutely 9-0, absolutely 9-0, absolutely 9-0.
Jeff, as you well know, attacking Mike Lindell, which is how we have been perceived. In fact, we have been called out by Brannon HOWSE, no less, the day after the symposium because of our efforts to help Lindell not fall into the mess he ran into, help Brannon HOWSE. But Brannon HOWSE, you know, this may be a good time for the folks to listen.
So I tried finding positive articles today about the Cyber Symposium, and apparently even some conservative outlets don't even want to write about it. But we are seeing some people on the right, Tom Trento. Shame on you, Tom Trento. Shame on you. Shame on Tom Trento of the United West. We won't be promoting them. We won't be working with them anymore. Shame on you. Shame on Jeff Nyquist. We should have never given him a platform. It's amazing the people we've given a platform to over the years that turn out to be not what we thought they were. But you live and learn, and it's hard to see sometimes through people. But Jeff Nyquist, big disappointment. Quoting me in articles, lying. He wasn't even quoting me correctly, and he was quoting private conversations. That's a trashy journalist. That's not even a journalist. When you start quoting people's private conversations and then without asking permission, you're not on the record, and then you can't even get it correct. And then at the end of the article, he quotes a well-known person, and that well-known person called me and said he couldn't even get my quote right. What a joke. What a clown. So shame on Jeff Nyquist. Shame on Tom Trento. You're on the list of people we will never work with, we will never promote. It's amazing the people on the right that don't seem to have a whole lot of common sense. And you can disagree with Mary Fanning. You can disagree and be critical of Dennis Montgomery. I don't know Dennis Montgomery. I don't have his number. But I will tell you this symposium wasn't about Dennis Montgomery. Whatever anyone makes about Dennis Montgomery or anything, this wasn't about him. That was used as a distraction by the people on the right and the left. You can disagree with Mary Fanning's assessment of things. You can disagree and criticize and be critical and dig through the background and the history of Dennis Montgomery. That's fine. I don't know Dennis Montgomery. I don't have Dennis Montgomery's phone number. I don't deal with Dennis Montgomery. So don't ever underestimate, in my opinion, folks, these are my opinion, you can disagree, the useful idiots on the right. Why would you want to be the useful idiots for the left by citing and parroting their criticism? Why not just talk about the good things that Lindell and the team are doing versus trying to tear people down that are trying to save this country? You're just helping to give the left credibility.
And our job today is not ad hominem attacks against Mike Lindell or Brannon HOWSE or anyone else. I think we're much above that sort of approach. But for the patriots out there, Jeff, we're trying to do a very difficult job. There's a tremendous love and appreciation for Mike Lindell, the pillow salesman. He opens the little window, he comes into your house. He's just a great guy. But when he gets up in the morning and tries to do election fraud investigations, he goes off the cliff, off the reservation. You, Jeff, have been deeply involved in research and almost became a member of Lindell's team. Briefly tell us how that came about and why you decided not to be a member of the team.
Yeah, well, after the November election, Brannon was really into this, that Dennis Montgomery had gotten all these packet captures for the election. And he was telling me this, and you have to talk to Mary Fanning because she's got the connection to Montgomery. And I said, and I was looking at this thinking, this doesn't make sense to me, because first, if how do you do that? I mean, my understanding is that nobody can really, from their basement, get all these things. And if you're doing it with government computers unauthorized, it's not legal. So I didn't understand it. And so I decided to do my own check because I was afraid that Brannon was getting into something that was going to destroy him and it was going to harm our cause. Because it's very, a lot of us saw things with the election that didn't make sense, and we wanted audits. But if you make false claims, that discredits the whole idea of audits. So I went and did my diligence. I did research on the internet. I called this journalist, Sharon Rondow. She put me in touch with Mike Zullo, who had done a 15-month investigation of Montgomery. And oh my gosh, FBI 302s, videos of Montgomery saying different things that he was saying now, things that lawyers and judges said about him, like the Playboy article, the man who conned the Pentagon. You cannot imagine. It took me 5 hours, the first conversation I had with Zullo, and my head was spinning. And it was just the beginning of an education. It's like I went to school to learn about this guy. And I gathered the stuff up, and then I went to go present it to Brannon. And he said, have you done your research on Mike Zullo? Well, what do you mean? And then he slanders Mike Zullo. And he and Fanning, I had conversations with Fanning, and she slandered friends of ours that also tried to warn Brannon HOWSE. They were deep state actors. They were bad people. Once CIA, always CIA or whatever. And it's like, no, those people aren't bad actors. And it's like he would not listen. He was just determined. And he and Fanning, by their own admission, converted Mike Lindell over to this. And this was disastrous because Mike Lindell has money, has resources. He's worth a lot of money, and he's very generous. And Lindell then got on board with this. And I begged Brannon HOWSE, don't do this. This is dangerous. And look at where they've taken this. And now that it hit the rails, went off the rails last week, they have crossed a line from being dupes of Montgomery to now being people who are actually, they know thing is false. They have to know it, but they're too embarrassed to admit it. And they're just gaslighting everybody.
Yeah, Jeff, I want you to add specifically on the information operation concept of marrying good information with total BS. What's that all about?
Well, there's a fantastic book that was published actually early this year. It was Natalie Grant, who worked for the State Department and trained a lot of CIA people. Natalie Grant's book, Disinformation. And she's got a chapter in there that explains this, that Lenin actually enunciated this very clearly to Felix Dzerzhinsky, the founder of the Russian secret police, the Soviet secret police rather, that our enemies have some good information on us. We need to poison that information with bad information to discredit the whole. And so this idea of poisoning the well of good information that your enemy has with bad to discredit your enemy, to mislead your enemy, to make your enemy into a complete fool is an essential information operation, a disinformation operation. And it's one of the core types of operations that disinformation engages in. And right now, in this information narrative warfare, this is an extremely dangerous thing for us to allow. We have to police our own side. We have to make sure that we're not taken in by false narratives or false information, because that can literally blow us up.
All right, Tom Trento here with Jeff Nyquist. You just heard from Jeff. He's a highly published author, investigative journalist. We're discussing we're a follow-up to the Mike Lindell Cyber Symposium that was held August 10 through 12, just a couple of weeks ago. And our goal today is not to throw Mike Lindell under the mattress. That's not our goal by any means. Our goal is simply to alert good Americans, patriots, to the absolute fraud that was presented, knowingly or unknowingly, by Lindell and Brandon HOWSE and Montgomery and Mary Fanning. And Mary Fanning's a whole nother story. Regarding specifically, we came under a lot of criticism that Mike Lindell put some good stuff out. How could you say anything negatively? All we did, the United West, our team, all we did was critique his major proposition that China hacked the election, that he had the evidence. Mark just gave me a note here that said any first-year IT student, when Lindell stood in front of the screen, absolute proof, any first-year IT student could take that information and say it was fake. That's how bizarre it was. Coming from Dennis Montgomery. All we're doing is saying that was fake. The Supreme Court ain't going to listen to Mike Lindell on this, and President Trump ain't coming back based upon this information. Oh, and by the way, prophetic again, nobody got $5 million. I kept getting letters. If you think you know it all, I didn't know it all, I just was critiquing one piece. Go over there and get the $5 million. Nobody's getting the... Jeff, did you get any piece of that action? No. All right, what we need to do right now is redirect. There needs to be a philosophical, a cultural, an intellectual, and an activism redirect from the false narrative, as Jeff just explained, of this nonsensical China hacking to the real fraud investigations going on in Antrim County in Michigan, Maricopa in Phoenix. Jeff, just recently, a very substantial, by J. Christian Adams, study was released where 15 million ballots came under the classification as unknown. And that means all the various counties reported, we don't know where these ballots are. We sent them out, 15 million, and we don't know where they went to. And you go, what? And the explanation is some could have been blown out from the mailbox into the garbage, could have been in the wrong person's home and he threw it away. Or there could possibly be fraud. In Maricopa County, out of 2.1 million people, Biden won in a Republican area by 10,457 votes. There's over 101,000, Jeff, 101,000 unknown ballots floating around in Maricopa County. Should we be looking at China hacking the election or maybe over at Maricopa County, Jeff?
Well, there were these border ground states where they halted the vote count. And I think John makes a good point about the real use of the computers was to inform people in these corrupt precincts how to alter the vote, because we got to remember COVID-19 meant that you had this enormous number of mail-in ballots. Unprecedented. You know, normally in elections in this country, we have exit polling and a small number of mail-in ballots. And that exit polling, you just can't cheat, because the exit polling is absolutely the most accurate form of polling. If you're counting every 10th or every 100th person coming out of a voting station randomly, that is accurate polling, the most accurate polling there is. So if there's cheating, you're going to know. But now in an election where you have these massive numbers of mail-in ballots that you don't know where they're coming from, the opportunity for cheating, and we know we have a problem with cheating in this country. We know that we have a problem. I mean, look at the research that's been done showing cheating in schools. So, and then you have these very corrupt machines, Philadelphia, Detroit, Milwaukee. You go to Maricopa County, whatever was going on there. You go to Atlanta, there's this opportunity and there's this motivation. And then you've got these narrow vote margins. What was it? 10,500 votes determined Arizona, 12,000 votes determined Georgia, and 60,000 votes determined Pennsylvania, a big electoral state. So this easily could have been shifted by these corrupt cities and precincts. So we should have a recount. We should have an audit, if only to heal the country and to put this behind us, because a lot of people in the country believe there was something fishy here, and we need to have our elections to be absolutely guaranteed that they're fair.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, our desire today is simply to have a clarion call go out and to move people from the conspiratorial approaches to election fraud, the nonsensical sideshow circuses, all of that, to the legitimate investigations now going on. And for the record, the United West team absolutely believe that through fraud, President Trump lost this election. Good old-fashioned New Jersey, New York type fraud, stuffing ballots, screwing around like that. You don't have to get esoteric to win in a COVID year. Jeff, some closing thoughts for folks that want direction, want leadership, want truth on this issue.
Yeah, I think the investigation needs to be on the ground game in those places where there was some, suspicious things going on and there's already evidence. And I think what I would like to say is that, we've made some criticisms. There's people that are going to be divided here, but the public, the people are forgiving. And if Brannon HOWSE and Mike Lindell have made a mistake, people are forgiving. If it's just, when you make a mistake, I've made horrible mistakes. We've all made horrible mistakes. Just admit it. We're all human. We all understand. You don't have to just stick to it until, the water comes up and you just drowned.
Jeff, interesting you should say that, because when we put out our video, a little 8-minute video, basically exposing the Lindell bad information, fraud, all of that, our team went through a lot to determine, okay, we can support everything we're saying, we're putting it out. But then internally we said, what's going to be the second video? And I said, well, that's simple. For me, it's very simple. I'm the one up front speaking. It's very simple. If Lindell proves that China hacked the election and the Supreme Court is overwhelmed and President Trump is reinstated, the next video is an apology from me. I will go on camera saying I was wrong. I apologize. I ask their forgiveness. And you're right, Jeff. People in this country will recognize that, not as weakness, but as strength. You made a mistake. Move on. I never thought I would have to do that. I was ready to do it. And maybe some others who aren't ready, of focusing on that which is true. Be discerning, and then let that truth permeate your head, your heart, your soul. Get to your feet. Get to work. We'll see you, I'm sure, in the near future, and we'll be pounding away, communicating the truth day in and day out. Tom Trento for the United West team. Take care.